Hello and welcome, or welcome back to Language, Culture, and Dr. Lou. And today let's chat about all the drama going on with Bad Bunny being chosen to headline the Super Bowl halftime show for this year. That will be Super Bowl 60 in February. And yeah, there's a lot of drama going around this, a lot of kickback from that choice. And yeah, I'd like to explore that as far as what cultural and maybe linguistics things might be at play. And like I said, there's been a lot of drama, a lot of people thinking, oh, this is nuts. How could they do this? Including, by the way, President Trump, right? You might have heard from reported on Newsmax uh, where Trump's reaction to this was, I don't know who he is. I don't know why they're doing it. It's like crazy. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And that might just be he's just acting out of reacting out of, I guess, ignorance if he really doesn't know who Bad Bunny is and just thinks, oh, well, the Super Bowl halftime show should always be headlined by somebody that I myself have heard of, right? Yeah, there's that aspect of it, but I think it might be a little more than that. I think there might be a little xenophobia involved because because a lot of Americans living in the continental US don't even recognize Puerto Rico as part of America, which I find, well, a little upsetting because Puerto Rico has absolutely been part of America for well over a century. And Puerto Rican citizens have been American citizens also for well over a century. So I think that's a little weird. But I think one reason that people might treat them as though they must be foreigners is not just because Puerto Rico is a territory instead of a state, it's because they speak Spanish there. And so there's a linguistic aspect of this too. And by the way, Bad Bunny, as far as I can tell, is totally planning on performing the halftime show basically in Spanish, or at least for the most part anyway. And other issues beyond being uh, treated as a foreigner because he's from Puerto Rico and he speaks Spanish, I think a lot of the more conservative folks have a problem with how Bad Bunny is known to do a little gender bending, right? This certainly seems to be something that the Trump administration has a huge problem with. And it's anyway, but let's not forget, he's a performer, he's an artist. He wears lots of different kinds of costumes, little get ups and whatnot on stage. And so, why not a little drag or even a little gender bending? A lot of times in interviews, you see him show up and he's got these long polished acrylic nails. And so that screams gender bending. And yeah, and he's actually shown up, well, to big public events wearing things that are very gender bending. So I do think that some of the kickback against him hosting headlining the Super Bowl halftime show, I think might have to do a little bit with how he's maybe too much of a friend to the LGBTQIA plus community, right? Could be. And certainly one really notable thing, like I said, he shows up in to public events in uh, gender bending outfits and all the rest. And you can see, the picture down all the way on the bottom below me. I do believe that was from a Met Gala one year. And the most interesting thing I've seen him wear to the Met Gala was in 2023. And I do hope you have YouTube set to show you this in HD because otherwise you're not you're probably not going to be able to see the details in the floral embroidery and all this in this white outfit. And I just love this one. You look at him from the front at the right angle, looks like he's wearing a plain old white suit. But then you notice, oh, it's backless. And what's with all the floral embroidery there? And on top of this, he had a train, um, that like a 26-foot long train with floral embroidery all over it. And so this to me, it's funny to me because from some angles, it screamed nice male suit. From other angles, it's more like screamed wedding dress. And so I did appreciate that. And I'm sorry I forget the designer's name. I'm not big with designers and whatnot, but anyway, so I do think that some of the people, some of the kickback I have heard had to do with gender bending, and I'm just gonna say, let's not forget he's an artist, he's a performer, and so costumes and all that, I'd say that's fair play, especially when it helps make you a friend to the LGBTQIA community. Anyway, and so in addition to that, there's also, like I mentioned, people treat a lot of continental Americans treat Puerto Ricans as foreigners because it's true they're not really part of the continental United States, although they still are on a continent on a continent. Well, not really. Um, they're much like, well, they're in the Caribbean anyway. We'll say that. Which Caribbean, I very much consider that as part of North America too. Anyway, and so since when have Puerto Ricans been part of America, part of the U.S. anyway? Since 1898. This was from the Treaty of Paris, which officially ended the Spanish American War because we had Spain and the US both trying to, well, stake out and keep their territories over here and whatnot. And it was interesting because the Treaty of Paris, what it did was it made both Puerto Rico and Guam territories of the US. And it also, the US bought the Philippines for like $20 million, which I know that sounds like not very much money for the Philippines and whatnot, but if you adjusted for inflation into today's dollars, this would probably be in the billions, right? And anyway, oh, and on top of that, this treaty is also where Cuba got its independence from Spain. Well, oddly enough, the United States immediately occupied Cuba and sort of took it over a little bit for a couple years anyway. Um, and so this, by a lot of people, is seen as the formal beginning of American imperialism anyway. But so after the Treaty of Paris in 1898, and then a couple other things within the next couple years. The U.S. had gained Puerto Rico and Guam and the Philippines, and we were even occupying Cuba at the time. And so, what I'm saying is, Puerto Rico has been part of the US for a very long time. And it was in 1917 where the law passed, which gave Puerto Ricans American citizenship. So Puerto Ricans have been American citizens since 1917, so well over 100 years now, well over a century now. And so deal with it, I guess. That's the truth. That's the fact. Puerto Ricans are American too, even though you might not have thought that in the past. And now, on top of that, like I said, people are thinking, oh, he's not American enough to host the Super Bowl. We should have somebody, an artist representing very American culture here. But what is American culture? I mean, for the longest time, we we prided ourselves in being a country of diversity, and so our culture is very, very diverse. And I would contend that Puerto Rican culture is part of American culture too, because again, they're citizens and all that. And so some of the kickback is, oh, we should have some like some old rock and roll legend, or maybe some country singers or something like that to be very, very American. And this reminds me of how Turning Point USA is doing their own halftime show with a couple country singers. And sorry, I'm forgetting their names because I saw who they had performing at their halftime show. Again, it's Turning Point USA, very, very conservative outlet. Um, and they were two guys that I had never heard of. And guess what? I don't really listen to country music. So I looked them up and yep, they're pretty famous in terms of country singers, but it doesn't mean every single American has even heard of them, okay? And yeah, I would be curious as to whether Donald Trump has heard of them either. He says he's never heard of Bad Bunny. Anyway, but it's not country music is not the only music that's American, right? Certainly it was cultivated here and whatnot, and certainly represents a certain segment of the American population. But then again, why not choose another music genre that was cultivated here, like jazz, for instance, right? That's very American as well. Or hip hop. Hip hop culture is part of American culture too. And so, yeah, so is um, is Bad Bunny American enough? Is he representative enough of about of American culture and all that? And I would say probably, although he sings in Spanish, that doesn't exclude you from being part of America, right? Just ask Southern California, for instance, or just go to Miami, right? And And one thing I notice is a lot of times we're not like for the Super Bowl halftime, so we're not picking who is the most American seeming of them all. We often go for really big pop stars, like these. There's a picture of Michael Jackson, and I think that was the 1993 Super Bowl. Yeah, I think it was 93 because I do believe it was right before the first time he was accused of let's not get into what Michael Jackson was accused of. We all know this already, so let's not go there. Um, so this was right before that, and he was doing a big heal the world thing. And anyway, and of course, you got next to him, you got Lady Gaga. She did the halftime show as well, pretty big and so much like Michael Jackson in that respect. And what about Bruce Springsteen? He also headlined the Super Bowl halftime show, although in all fairness, he was quite a bit older by the time he hosted the Super Bowl halftime show than he looks in that picture down there, right? Anyway, um, but so does it have to be somebody super, super American? Or are we just looking for somebody famous, a big pop star who has good sales and all that. And I would say that, yeah, Bad Bunny certainly qualifies as a superstar in the music industry now. Certainly, I wouldn't say Michael Jackson famous because who is or ever has been Michael Jackson famous, but definitely he's gaining on folks like Lady Gaga or even Taylor Swift. Anyway, he's very famous as demonstrated by all the awards he's been nominated for and all the awards he's won. And most recently, just within the last 2 weeks on the recording of this video, anyway, um, in October 2025, Billboard did the Latin Musical Awards and all of that, and Bad Bunny got the award for the best Latin artist of this century. And by that, I mean the 21st century. which I think is kind of funny, a little premature because the century is only like a quarter of the way over, but it's good to recognize the artists while they're still alive and everything. So we can't wait until the year 2100, can we? But yeah, but again, he's won a lot of awards and he's super famous. And so he's a big star in his own right. And I did mention Taylor Swift before and how he's gaining on folks like that because she, of course, is super successful and her tours make a lot of money. And by the way, so do his tours. His international tours are making a lot of money. And I wanted to make the connection with Taylor Swift because did you know that Bad Bunny and Taylor Swift are two of only a handful of musicians ever who's who have any music videos that have gained over 1 billion views on TikTok. And so, yeah, Bad Bunny just joined that rank not too long ago, and so he's in good company with other big stars like Taylor Swift. And so I say yes, he's absolutely famous enough, even if not everybody has heard of him yet. You know, like I said, who the heck else can be Michael Jackson famous? There's not nobody. No big star has been heard of by everybody these days. But anyway, so is he famous enough? I say yes. Is he American enough? I say absolutely yes. And that is demonstrated by Super Bowl 54. In fact, uh, that he is actually Super Bowl halftime show ready. He has a little experience here, and I don't know if you remember, but in 2020, right before the pandemic came and uh, gripped America by the balls, anyway. This was right before that, and who were the headliners? J Lo, right? Jennifer Lopez and Shakira were the two headliners, both Hispanic, of course, and Shakira is Colombian, whereas J Lo is Puerto Rican. Although she was born in New York City, born in the Bronx, her parents were both from Puerto Rico, and then they met in New York City, and they had her there. So she's very, very Puerto Rican as well. And I did not know Bad Bunny yet back then, and I was like, "Who is that rapper on stage with Shakira?" And that was Bad Bunny. So he didn't headline; he was a guest performer, but still Super Bowl experience, and that show did get a little kickback for several times. You had Puerto Rican flags widely displayed. Like I said, J Lo is Puerto Rican too. Well, Puerto Rican American one, I would say. But I find it funny calling somebody Puerto Rican American because as I've already discussed, Puerto Rico very much part of the U.S. So Puerto Rican alone is a good way to put it. And so see J Lo there with the Puerto Rican flag and everything. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention at the very beginning on the title slide of this video. That's why I had the American flag and the Puerto Rican flags right next to it, each other. Look, so the Puerto Rican flag, and by the way, under that little girl, behind that little girl's head, uh, you would probably see the star on the Puerto Rican flag. But otherwise, we're talking blue background with the star in it, and then red and white stripes. This is very reminiscent of the American flag, isn't it? And so that show did get a little kickback to because of people thinking, oh, don't be celebrating Puerto Rico. This is America. But like I said, Puerto Rico is part of it. And by the way, Shakira, like I said, is Colombia. So she was actually, this worked very well with Bad Bunny because they did a mash up of one of her very famous songs and one of his pretty famous songs. And both of these songs are in Spanish. So that helped it work together and all that. And so Bad Bunny is quite American enough because Puerto Ricans are American too, and he's quite famous enough. And now on top of this, he's got Super Bowl halftime show experience, not as the headliner, but he's been there, done that, and might help him be better prepared to put on a good show for us. So I don't know. I'm kind of looking forward to it, I guess. And so in addition to that, just wanted to note, like, again, a lot of people thinking he's not American enough. And one of these reasons might be because the Good Bunny Foundation, they do most of their philanthropic work in Puerto Rico. For instance, the Good Bunny Foundation, that's a nice play on words, Bad Bunny, Good Bunny. Anyway, um, they help disadvantaged Puerto Rican youths. They help grow them in music, art, and sports. They help with their growth and all of those things. Um, so that's very good. And he also does a lot of other philanthropy. Like he gave $100,000, I'm pretty sure, he himself, not the foundation, but Bad Bunny himself, to help Puerto Rican kids with autism and muscular disabilities and all that. So that is pretty great, as well as he has delivered literally thousands of Christmas presents to disadvantaged youth as well. And yeah, so he does a lot of good philanthropy. And I say, yeah, why not concentrate on Puerto Ricans? Because that's where he's from. So I say, yeah, why not? And anyway, um, I did also want to sort of at least mention his philanthropic work because it's worth mentioning, and he does a lot of good out there. So maybe some of the money he makes from doing the Super Bowl halftime show might go to charity too. Anyway, and lastly, I wanted to talk about how last month, just about a month ago, I'm recording this video, I think 30 days after his appearance on SNL. And this was now the second time he hosted Saturday Night Live and the fourth time he was a musical guest. So that sounds pretty American to me, right? Saturday Night Live, that's a staple in American culture. And I love the little diatribe he went into during his monologue. He started out in English, but he ended up switching to Spanish. And they weren't subtitling this or anything. Like I said, Saturday Night is live, so no subtitles or anything. And I did catch a bit of it. My Spanish is not great. I would say I'm at like an intermediate level in Spanish, but I understand a lot more than I can actually say, than I can speak. So, and I heard it, it was great. He started talking about how oftentimes he says, "This is for my people," and that kind of stuff. And he said, for all the Hispanics living here in the US and also around the world, other Hispanics, people working to break barriers and to really show that they belong and they have cultural importance and all that. And so he mentioned specifically American Hispanics as well in this. He didn't just mention all the Spanish speakers around the world, although he did include them too. But he was saying all that, and it was, I mean, not even 2 minutes. I don't think it could have even been 2 minutes of Spanish in there. And and the funniest part to me was at the end of this, he said he turned back to English and said, "Oh, and if you didn't understand anything I just said, you have 4 months to learn." And I just loved that. I was like, okay, yep. Yeah, I guess taking some time learning Spanish would certainly help us understand his songs a little more if we don't understand Spanish already. But yeah, to me, I just love that. And yeah, and that too got a little kickback from other people as far as why is he got to be speaking Spanish? By the way, in New York City, speaking Spanish, not so unheard of, is it? Anyway, especially by Puerto Ricans. Um, but yeah, I just sort of love this, and I think absolutely Bad Bunny is, I think, is very much ready for hosting the Super Bowl, and I think he's certainly American enough and certainly famous enough. So yeah, I don't really get all the drama around it. I think most of it is involved in ethnocentrism and, well, which is intrinsically racist aligned and all that. And I think there's a linguistic aspect of this. Like we've had a lot of people who are not rock and rollers or anything and not white doing the Super Bowl halftime show. But then you spice this up with the whole thing's going to be in Spanish. And I think people are having an adverse reaction to this. But I say, um, get over it. That's the reality of the US these days. And try to make it any other way, I say would be going backwards, trying to get back to the bad old days that never really existed anyway. But yeah, so I know I would be very, very happy to hear your comments in the comments section on why shouldn't he host the Super Bowl show or any of that. And so that would be really cool. I would appreciate getting a little conversation going. I would love that kind of thing. And I promise I will react and reply to each of your comments. I'm very much on top of that. And thank you so much for watching this little video again. And here again, you see how similar Puerto Rican flag and the American flag are. This is not just a coincidence, right? Anyway, and again, thanks for watching this video. Please do, if you got anything out of it, give it a like, drop a little thumbs up.